My husband asked me to step out of his birthday picture, and he said it loud enough that everyone around us heard him clearly. Right then, something plain and brutal landed in my chest, and I understood it without needing anyone to explain it. I was inside my own marriage standing right there, but somehow I didn't count as family. I can still hear the way his voice sounded when he said it. He wasn't mad or embarrassed, just calm and offhand, like he was asking a neighbor to move a car blocking the driveway. Hey, can you step out for a second? Just family. For a split second, I honestly thought I must have heard him wrong. I was already smiling, turned toward the camera, my hand still resting on his arm like it always did. The room smelled like garlic and warm bread, and someone behind us laughed a little too hard at nothing. The phone was already up, everyone frozen and waiting. I looked at Mark, my husband of 7 years, and waited for him to meet my eyes, to realize what he just said and take it back. He didn't. He was already looking past me, focused on lining up the picture. On his other side stood his ex-wife, Denise, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. His daughter Kayla was there too, 16 years old and stiff with that teenage awkwardness, staring down at her shoes like she wanted the floor to swallow her whole. Mark's sister Laura waved from the edge of the group, trying to pull everyone in tighter so they'd all fit. I felt the heat climb up my neck and settle across my face. My wedding ring suddenly felt too tight, like it didn't belong on my hand anymore. "Oh," I said, though I don't remember deciding to speak at all. "Okay." I stepped back, then took another step without really thinking about it. Someone shifted forward to fill the space I'd been standing in, smooth and automatic, like water closing over a dropped stone. The camera clicked. I turned and walked out of the banquet room before anyone could call my name. That moment was the peak of it all, whether Mark ever realized it or not. Everything that followed came after that. The restaurant was Maggiano's in Naperville, Illinois. We'd been there a dozen times over the years, always for birthdays or anniversaries. It was safe, familiar, middle-of-the-road Italian food, the kind of place everyone agrees on without arguing. The servers wore black vests and called you folks. It was Mark's 52nd birthday, Wednesday night, 7:18 p.m. According to the clock above the hostess stand that I stared at while I waited for the burning in my eyes to calm down. Behind me, life kept moving. I could still hear forks scraping plates, laughter bursting out here and there, conversations stacked on top of each other like nothing had happened. I walked past an older couple waiting to be seated. The woman glanced at me, then looked away fast, the way people do when they sense something's wrong but don't want to step into it. My heels sounded too loud against the tile. My hands were shaking as I pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the parking lot. The air outside was cool, early fall, and I stood there for a second just breathing it in, trying to slow my heart. The smell of marinara clung to my clothes. I hit the key fob and heard my car unlock somewhere off to my left. I got behind the wheel and just sat there. My purse was still on my lap where I'd grabbed it without thinking. My phone buzzed once. I didn't look at it. I thought about going back inside. That's the part one don't like admitting, but it's true. I told myself I could laugh it off, slide back into my chair, and let it turn into one of those moments you smooth over later, the way I always did. I could tell myself he didn't mean it like that. I could tell myself I was just being sensitive. I pictured myself walking back in, smiling too hard, acting like nothing happened while the cake came out. Everyone would relax again. Mark would give me that grateful look he always gave when I fixed things for him. Instead, I started the car and drove home. The house was quiet when I walked in. Our house, the one in a calm subdivision off Route 59, with the maple tree out front and the back porch step that always creaked. I kicked off my shoes by the door and stood in the kitchen, listening to the refrigerator hum. I didn't cry right away. I washed my hands. I wiped down a counter that didn't need cleaning. I changed into sweatpants. I stayed busy until there was nothing left to do. At 10:42 p.m., my phone buzzed again. It was a text from Laura. "He's been drinking non-stop since you left." I stared at the screen. The words felt unreal, like they belonged to another night, another marriage entirely. I typed something, deleted it, typed again. Then I locked the phone and set it face down on the table. I didn't answer. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock on the dresser count off the seconds. Mark didn't come home until after midnight. I heard the garage door open and close. His footsteps were uneven on the stairs. He never came into the bedroom. He slept on the couch. In the morning, the house smelled faintly like coffee and something sour. I stood in the kitchen wearing my robe, staring at the empty chair where he usually sat, trying to find the right words for what I felt. It wasn't just hurt. It wasn't even anger yet. It was the understanding that this moment hadn't come out of nowhere. There had been signs, small things I'd ignored or explained away over the years. Invitations that included Denise because it was easier for Kayla. Christmas cards addressed to Mark and family. Family photos where I was always the one behind the camera. I told myself I was being mature, understanding, flexible. Standing in that restaurant being asked to step aside like an extra who wandered into the wrong scene, something inside me finally stopped bending. At 6:05 a.m., the coffee maker finished brewing with a loud gurgle. The local news droned on about traffic on I-88. I wrapped my hands around my mug and felt the warmth soak into my palms. I didn't know what I was going to do yet. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I wasn't even thinking about leaving. I was thinking about the empty space in that photo, and how easily someone else had stepped into it. I'd spent years making myself smaller so everyone else could fit more comfortably. And for the first time, I wondered what would happen if I stopped. The next morning, one word kept circling my thoughts. A word everyone liked to use for me. Understanding. I'd heard it so often over the years it barely meant anything anymore. Laura said it. Denise said it, smiling like it was a compliment. Even Mark said it, usually right after asking me to swallow something that hurt. "You're so understanding," he'd say, and I'd usually nod along, because nodding took less effort than trying to explain why my chest felt tight every time he said it. That morning, I stood in the kitchen at 6:05 a.m. The sky outside the window still dull and gray, listening to the coffee maker sputter and hiss its way through a fresh pot. The radio was tuned to the local AM station Mark liked, the one that talked about traffic backups and high school football scores like they mattered to everyone. A voice mentioned an accident near Aurora. I stirred cream into my mug and watched it spiral through the coffee. Somewhere along the way, understanding had stopped being a virtue and turned into a leash. I just hadn't noticed the moment it slipped around my neck. Mark came upstairs around 7, moving carefully, like the house might snap at him if he took a wrong step. He looked rough. His eyes were bloodshot, his hair still damp from the shower. He didn't look at me right away. "Morning," he said. "Morning," I said back. He opened the refrigerator, stared into it for a few seconds like the answers might be in there, then closed it again. "Last night kinda got away from me," he said, scratching at the back of his head. I waited. Waiting was something I'd gotten very good at over the years. "I didn't mean to embarrass you," he added after a pause. "You know that, right?" I took a sip of coffee. It tasted bitter. "What did you mean, Mark?" I asked. He sighed and rubbed the back of his neck again. "It was just a family picture. Denise was there for Kayla. It wasn't a big deal." There it was. The minimizing. The casual erasing of everything that hurt. I felt that familiar instinct rise up. The urge to smooth it over, to reassure him, to make it easier for both of us to move forward without discomfort. My mouth even opened. Then I closed it. "I need to get ready for work," I said instead. He looked thrown off like I'd skipped a line in a script we'd both memorized years ago. "Okay," he said slowly. I left the kitchen before he could say anything else. At work my focus was shot. I'm an office manager for a small construction company in Lisle. Nothing fancy. Phones, invoices, schedules, the kind of job where people assume things magically run themselves. By mid-morning, Sharon from accounting leaned over the wall of my cubicle. "You okay?" she asked. Sharon was 62, sharp as a tack, with short gray hair and a habit of going straight for the truth. I trusted her. "I'm fine," I said automatically. She lifted an eyebrow. "You want to try that again?" I let out a short laugh that didn't have any humor in it. "My husband asked me to step out of his birthday picture last night," I said. "Said it was just family." Sharon didn't gasp or make sympathetic noises. She just nodded once. "That'll do it." "That'll do what?" I asked. "Make you tired," she said. "Real tired." Then she went back to her desk like that was all there was to say. Somehow, that made me feel more understood than all the reassurance in the world ever could. All day long, memories kept popping up without warning. Like the Christmas cards. Every December I picked them out at Target. The thick cardstock ones with the snowflakes pressed into the front. I wrote every address by hand. I signed them Mark and Sarah. When the thank you texts came in, they were always addressed to Mark. Once his aunt even wrote back, "So sweet of Denise to think of us." I remembered the neighborhood barbecue last summer, when someone asked how long Mark and Denise had been divorced. He answered while I stood right there holding a tray of burgers. No one corrected themselves. Neither did he. I thought about Kayla's middle school graduation, standing behind the camera and zooming in so everyone else would fit in the frame. At the time, I told myself this was what being mature looked like. This was what a second marriage required: flexibility, grace. By the time I drove home that evening, the word felt sour in my mouth. Understanding. Mark wasn't home yet. I reheated leftovers and ate standing at the counter. The house felt too quiet, like it was holding its breath. After dinner, I opened the hall closet to grab the vacuum, and almost tripped over a stack of papers that had slid out onto the floor. I crouched down, annoyed. Mark had a habit of shoving things wherever there was space. Old mail. Insurance statements. Manuals for appliances we didn't even own anymore. As I stacked the papers, a manila folder caught my eye. There was handwriting on the tab. Mortgage/deed/insurance. I froze. I don't know what made me sit down right there on the hallway floor and open it. Maybe I was exhausted. Maybe it was instinct. Or maybe some part of me was already searching for proof that I wasn't making things up. Inside were copies of our mortgage statements, our homeowner's insurance, and the deed to the house. Our house. Both names were on it. His and mine. Clear as day. I kept flipping through the folder. There were bank statements from our joint account. Printed emails, old ones dated years back. One jumped out at me. "Hey babe," it started. "Can you sign this real quick? It's just for the refinance. You're better with paperwork anyway." I remembered that night. He'd slid the papers across the kitchen table, half asleep, trusting me to take care of it. And I had, without a second thought. I leaned back against the wall, the folder resting in my lap. For years I'd let everyone believe I was on the sidelines, extra, optional. But on paper that wasn't true at all. My phone buzzed. A text from Laura. "I hope you know Mark loves you. He's just bad with emotions." I stared at the message, then set my phone down without replying. Later that night, lying alone in bed, I stared at the ceiling and finally let myself think the thought I'd been pushing away all day. What if I stopped being understanding? What if I quit translating his behavior into something easier for everyone else to accept? The idea scared me more than I expected. Being agreeable had been my role for so long. I wasn't sure who I'd be without it. But as I drifted toward sleep, one thing felt solid. I wasn't invisible on paper. And maybe, just maybe, that mattered more than anyone realized. I hadn't gone looking for leverage. I'd stumbled into it the way you stumble into the truth while cleaning up someone else's mess. Saturday morning, Mark went golfing with his brother-in-law, acting like everything was normal. I stayed home and did what I always did when my nerves were shot. I organized. Drawers. Files. Quiet, physical work that gave my mind room to catch up. I pulled everything out of the hall closet and spread it across the living room floor. Old manuals, warranty cards, and stacks of unopened mail with Mark's name printed on the front. I kept sorting, making piles, recycling what I could, stacking the rest. That's when I came across the credit card statements. They weren't hidden or locked away. Just stuffed into an old shoebox, like they'd somehow sort themselves out if no one paid attention. I sat cross-legged on the rug and started flipping through them, my stomach tightening with every page. Some of the charges were familiar: Home Depot, Costco, the gas station near his office. Others stopped me cold. A brand new set of golf clubs. A weekend hotel stay in Milwaukee. Bar tabs big enough to make my eyebrows shoot up. I grabbed my laptop and logged into our bank account, then into the credit monitoring app. It was the same one I'd set up years ago when we were trying to improve our mortgage rate. My name. My email. My password. The numbers stared back at me, neutral and unbothered. My credit score was excellent. His was not. I leaned back against the couch and let out a long breath I hadn't realized I'd been holding. What I felt wasn't victory or satisfaction. It was something steadier than that. Clarity. For years, I'd been the one making sure the bills were paid on time. The one catching mistakes before they became problems. The one quietly keeping our finances balanced while Mark played the part of provider. Everyone assumed he handled it all. He never corrected them. I did. My phone rang. It was Sharon. "You busy?" she asked. "Sort of," I said. "But not really." I told her what I'd found. Not every detail, just enough to explain. She went quiet for a moment. "You know what that means, right?" she said. "That I'm better with spreadsheets than I thought? That you've been carrying him," she said. "Financially. And in every other way too." I let out a soft laugh. "It doesn't feel like that." "It never does," she said, "when you're the one holding all the weight." That afternoon, I scheduled a meeting with a lawyer. Her office was in Downers Grove, in a low brick building near a strip mall. The waiting room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old paper. I filled out the intake form on a clipboard, my hands shaking, half convinced I was being dramatic. Patricia Klein, Pat, was in her early 60s, with silver hair pulled into a low bun and reading glasses perched on her head. She offered me tea and didn't rush me once. I told her everything. The photo. The years of being understanding. The folder on the hallway floor. She listened, nodding now and then, her pen moving steadily across a yellow legal pad. When I finished, she set the pen down. "You're not here because you want to punish him," she said. "No," I answered quickly. I can't keep doing this." She studied me for a moment. "You've been protecting his image," she said. "Socially, financially, emotionally." I swallowed. I thought that was what marriage was. "It is," she said gently, "when it goes both ways." She walked me through my options: separation, counseling, boundaries. None of it sounded dramatic or extreme. It sounded practical, grown up. Then she asked a question I wasn't prepared for. "Do you know who he lists as his emergency contact at work?" The words hit harder than I expected. "I assume it's me," I said. "Assume," she repeated. That night I checked. Mark's work email was still logged in on the home computer. I hesitated, guilt flashing through me, then reminded myself I wasn't digging for secrets. I was verifying facts. Emergency contact. Denise. I closed the laptop and sat there in the dark, the house quiet around me. I wasn't family in photos. I wasn't first in line when it mattered. Something inside me hardened. Not into anger but into resolve. The following week I stopped doing things. Not all at once. Not dramatically. Just quietly. I didn't remind him to refill his blood pressure medication. When he realized at the pharmacy, he called me irritated. "Can you just call it in?" he asked. "I can't today," I said. My voice sounded unfamiliar to me, calm, steady. He huffed. "Fine." At the church fundraiser planning meeting, I didn't bring the sign-up sheets. I didn't bring dessert either. When someone asked where they were, Mark looked straight at me. "I thought you had them," he said. "I didn't," I replied. The silence that followed was thick and awkward. Someone cleared their throat. The meeting moved on. At home, Mark grew restless. Sharper around the edges. He misplaced things. Missed a deadline at work. Came home late, frustrated. "You've been distant," he said one night. "I've been busy," I answered. It wasn't a lie. One evening my phone buzzed with a message from Kayla. "Are you mad at my dad?" I stared at the screen, my chest tightening. "No," I typed back after a moment. "I'm just figuring some things out." A minute later she replied. "I didn't like the picture thing." I closed my eyes. In that moment something important clicked into place. I wasn't the only one who'd noticed. I was just the only one who'd been asked to step aside. When you stop holding everything together, it doesn't collapse right away. First it wobbles. That was the part that surprised me most. I'd expected yelling, accusations, some dramatic blow-up in the kitchen. Instead, things failed in small, spaced-out ways, just far enough apart that no one could blame bad luck anymore. Mark started losing things. His phone, his keys, important papers he swore he'd left on the counter. He asked me where they were the way he always had, already annoyed that I didn't know. "I haven't seen them," I'd say. Sometimes that was true. Sometimes it wasn't. Either way, I didn't go searching. On Wednesday afternoon, he called from Walgreens. "They don't have my blood pressure refill," he said. "Did you call it in?" I was sitting at my desk at work, invoices spread out in front of me. Sharon glanced over, curious. No, I said. I didn't. There was a pause. Why not? I forgot, I said. Again, not a lie. Just not the whole truth. He let out a long breath. I guess I'll handle it. After I hung up, my hands were shaking. I sat there staring at my phone for a long moment. This was harder than I thought it would be. Not because it was wrong, but because it went against every habit I'd built. For years, I'd been the quiet safety net. The backup plan. The one who noticed problems before they became problems. Now I was letting things break. Friday night, we went to a neighborhood barbecue at the Wilsons' house, 2 doors down. Normally, I would have brought a salad or dessert, shown up early, helped set everything up. This time, I arrived 10 minutes late, empty-handed, wearing a plain sweater instead of my usual cheerful host version of myself. Mark noticed right away. You didn't make the pasta salad, he said, a little too loudly. I didn't, I replied. He frowned, confused, like he'd missed a step in a dance. I thought you were going to. I didn't say that. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by the smell of grilled meat and classic rock spilling out of someone's Bluetooth speaker. One of the neighbors glanced over, then quickly looked away. Dinner was tense. Someone asked Mark when the food would be ready. He snapped that it would be done when it was done. Across the table, I noticed a woman raise her eyebrows at her husband. That reaction, that quiet acknowledgement, was new. Later that night, back at home, Mark paced the living room while I sat in bed reading. Finally, he stopped. Something's going on with you, he said. You're acting like I did something terrible. I set my book down. You did. He scoffed. That picture again, Sarah? You're blowing that way out of proportion. The old anger flared up, sharp and familiar. This time I let it pass. It wasn't just the photo, I said. It was everything around it. He shook his head. You're being dramatic. That word didn't hit the same way it used to. Good night, Mark, I said and turned off the lamp. The next morning, I woke up to a text from Laura. I'm worried about him, she wrote. He's not himself. I stared at the message, then typed something I'd never said before. Neither am I. The real test came a week later. Mark told me about his retirement recognition dinner. They're having it at the VFW hall, he said. Saturday night. People from church, from work. I need you there. The way he said need made something twist inside my chest. I'll think about it, I said. He looked startled. Think about it? Yes. He stared at me, then let out a short, uneasy laugh. You're coming. I met his eyes. We'll see. That night, Kayla texted again. Dad's been really stressed, she wrote. Are you guys okay? I sat on the edge of the bed, phone in my hand, feeling the weight of everything pressing down. This was the part no one warned you about, the doubt, the fallout, the people caught in the middle. We're working through some things. I typed carefully. None of this is your fault. She replied with a heart emoji. Then a minute later. You didn't deserve that. I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. By Friday afternoon, Mark was wound tight. He snapped at the dog. Forgot a meeting. Accused me of hiding things from him. I'm not hiding, I said. I'm just not fixing. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, my confidence wobbling. What if this was cruel? What if I was hurting him more than necessary? What if I was wrong? Then I pictured myself stepping out of that photo. I decided to go to the dinner. Not for him. For me. The VFW hall smelled like burnt coffee that had been sitting too long and floor cleaner that never quite covered the past. Folding chairs were lined up in neat rows, name tags stuck to jackets and blouses. People greeted each other with that familiar mix of warmth and routine you only see at church events and retirement dinners. It was Saturday night, 6:30 p.m. Mark's big moment. Before we left, I stood in the bathroom at home for a long time, staring at my reflection. I didn't dress up. No bright colors. No statement jewelry. Just a navy blouse, black slacks, low heels. I wanted to look like myself. Not an accessory. The drive over was quiet. Mark kept flipping through radio stations, never landing on one. His knee bounced. I watched the familiar streets roll by and felt strangely calm, like something had already been decided. Inside the hall, people spotted Mark right away. There he is. Happy retirement. About time they recognized you. Hands clapped his back. He smiled, shook hands, slid easily into the role he knew best. Respected, dependable, the man everyone thought they knew. Then I saw Denise. She stood near the refreshment table in a cream cardigan, chatting comfortably with a woman from church. She looked at ease, like she belonged. Kayla stood beside her, scrolling on her phone. When she noticed me, her expression softened. She gave a small wave. Mark didn't see them at first. When he did, his shoulders relaxed. Good, he murmured. They made it. They. Not you. We took our seats. The program began. Speeches about dedication, about years of service, about being a family man. Each phrase landed quietly, like pebbles dropped into still water. I felt the ripples but didn't show it. Then came the photos. A woman from the church committee stood and raised her phone. Let's get a family picture with Mark. Mark turned automatically and reached for my hand. His fingers wrapped around mine, warm, familiar, like nothing had ever changed. For a heartbeat, the old instinct flared. Step in. Smile. Make it easy. Instead, I gently pulled my hand away. Oh, I said, calm and polite, my voice carrying just enough. I shouldn't be in this one. Mark blinked. What? I smiled, the careful kind, the kind meant to keep things from exploding. You told me last week I'm not family for pictures, remember? I'll just grab some more ice. The room went quiet. Not dramatic, just wrong, like someone had missed a step. A few people laughed uncertainly, then stopped when no one joined in. Denise looked down at her shoes. Kayla's head snapped up. Dad, she said. Mark's face flushed. He forced a chuckle. She's joking. I didn't move. Tom Reynolds, a family friend Mark had known since high school, frowned. Is she joking, Mark? That did it. Mark's smile cracked. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The phone lowered slowly. No picture was taken. I turned and walked toward the refreshment table. My heart pounding so hard I was sure everyone could hear it. My hands shook as I scooped ice into a plastic cup. I focused on the sound, the clatter, the scrape, anything to keep myself steady. Behind me, voices murmured. Questions whispered. A truth finally loose in the room. Later in the car, Mark exploded. What the hell was that? He demanded. You embarrassed me. I watched the parking lot lights slide past the window. No, I said quietly. I didn't. He was still ranting when we pulled into the driveway. I went inside, locked the bathroom door, and let my legs give out. I slid down to the floor and cried. Not from regret but relief. For the first time in a long while, the truth had been said out loud. After that night, the house felt different. Quieter, yes, but also clearer. Like a window that had finally been wiped clean. For a few days after that, Mark and I moved around each other carefully, like we were sharing space with something fragile. We spoke only when we had to. He slept on the couch again. I didn't ask him to come back to bed. He cycled through reactions, anger first, then self-pity, and finally a heavy silence. On Tuesday evening, he stood in the kitchen watching me rinse dishes, lingering like he was waiting for an opening. You didn't have to do that, he said at last. I shut off the faucet and turned to face him. I didn't have to step out of that photo either. He rubbed his face, suddenly looking older than I'd ever seen him. You made me look like a fool. I shook my head. No, I said. You looked like yourself. That was the moment things changed. Not with a break or a blow-up, just a shift. Over the next few weeks, the consequences settled in. Not all of them dramatic, but all of them real. Some people from church stopped calling the way they used to. Others reached out quietly in private. One morning, Sharon brought me a cup of coffee and said, "About time." With a small, knowing smile. Laura called once, her voice awkward and subdued. She said she hadn't realized how things looked from the outside. I didn't realize how they looked from the inside. I told her. Kayla came over one Saturday afternoon while Mark was out. We sat at the kitchen table, the same one where I'd signed paperwork years earlier without a second thought. I'm glad you said something, she said, picking at the edge of a napkin. I always felt like I was supposed to pretend nothing was weird. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. You never have to pretend with me. That mattered more than I expected it to. With Mark, the reckoning came slower. He asked awkwardly about counseling. We went to 2 sessions. We talked about boundaries, about respect, about what the word family actually meant. I also made quiet changes of my own. I opened a checking account in my name, updated beneficiaries, took my name off a few things and put it firmly on others. Nothing dramatic, just clear. One evening weeks later, Mark asked if we could talk. "I don't want to lose you," he said. I believed him. But belief wasn't enough anymore. "I don't want to lose myself," I replied. Whether our marriage would survive was still an open question. What wasn't open anymore was my place in it. One morning I stood alone in the kitchen, sunlight pouring through the window, coffee warming my hands. I took a picture. Not for anyone else. Not for social media. Just for me. My face looked a little tired. A little older. But steady. I printed the photo and stuck it on the fridge with a magnet. In the picture of my life, I wasn't stepping out anymore. If you've ever been asked, directly or quietly, to make yourself smaller so someone else could feel bigger, I hope you remember this. Dignity doesn't come from being included by permission. It comes from standing where you belong. If this story felt familiar, you're not alone. And you're not too old, too late, or too much to take your place back. Thank you for listening. Share it if it resonated. Stay if you need the reminder.